Okay, I think we're connected. I hope the audio and video are working correctly. I'm ready to go in about a minute. Good, I got some feedback that it's coming through. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Okay, so continuing on with a series based on the Mahanama Sutta, in which the Buddha is giving advice for practice to the lay follower Mahanama. And the Buddha gave him the 5 indriya, the 5 faculties, which we've finished discussing. And in the second half of the sutta, he gives 6 contemplations. These are the 6 contemplations that are listed in the Visuddhimagga as well, the Anusatis. There are forms of meditation that are more cognitively based. One contemplates using the imagination, using thought. One contemplates certain themes and develops them that way. And the 6 are contemplation of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, contemplation of virtue and generosity, and contemplation of devas. So today we're going to deal with Buddhanusati, contemplation of the Buddha. Contemplation of the 3 triple jewels, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, is a way of deepening the refuge, of aligning the mind with that which is noble, and beginning with the Buddha. This particular one, Buddhanusati, is also given as one of the protective meditations that one ought to do to protect oneself from negative mind states and so on. The way these contemplations of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha are done is to go through the attributes of the Buddha. So Parita, which many people are familiar with. Here at Arrow River, we chant it every morning to start the day. It's a contemplation of Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And it lists the qualities of the Buddha in the first stanza. Bhagava Arahang Sama Sambuddho Vijja Charana Sampano Sugato Loka Vidu. Anuttaro parisa dhamma sarati satadeva manusanang buddho bhagava. So the first attribute is bhagava, which is generally translated as the Blessed One. It is a bhagava is a epithet or a that is given to holy men in India, and still versions of it are still used today. You hear Bhagavant or Bhagawan. One meaning of the Buddha being blessed, the Blessed One, is that Gautama Buddha was recognized or blessed by a previous Buddha 92 kappas ago, a Dipankara Buddha. This is something that every Buddha, as they begin the Bodhisattva path towards Buddhahood, they are blessed or recognized by a living Buddha. So this creates a kind of a link or a lineage of Buddhas over time. It's not a very recent event by any means. It was 92 aeons ago, which emphasizes the great length of time it requires to attain Buddhahood. But it did have this recognition. The next attribute is arahang, which is a grammatical form of arahant, the perfected one. So every Buddha is arahant, but not all arahants are Buddhas. There is a distinction between arahant and a Buddha. They both have the same realization of nibbana, but the Buddha has something more. He has developed all the paramitas to perfection. So he has a range of special powers, principally the Buddha eye, the Buddha chaku, which enables him to see not only into other realms, but he sees into people's hearts and minds, and then is able to teach them properly. But arahang means one who is perfected. That's the definition of an arahant, is someone who has rid themselves of all defilements. So the natural, primordial, simple state of mind is realized, and one is in tune with the unconditioned, that is nibbana. This is an arahant. Samma sambuddho. This means one who has attained perfect Buddhahood by his own effort. Samma means perfect or complete. It's the adjective used in the Eightfold Noble Path. We have samma ditti, samma sankappa, and so on, which we translate as right thought, right speech, and so on. But it more properly should be like perfect or flawless. And Buddho means one who is awake. Comes from the word for being awake. So one who is awakened. Sam Buddho, the adjective sam means by himself, by his own efforts. And this is a distinction made between Buddha and the three types of enlightened persons in Theravada are a Buddha, a Pachika Buddha, and an Arahant. An Arahant is not awakened entirely by himself. He has had the teachings of the Buddha to guide him. So he's not. So he is a listener, a sawaka. You know? Whereas the Buddha only arises in a time when the teachings of the previous Buddha are utterly forgotten and lost. So he has to find a way by himself without guidance. So this is the Sambuddho. And a Pacceka Buddha is someone who attains enlightenment in the period between Buddhas, but they're not, they don't have the complete perfection of a Sama Sambuddha, in that they leave no legacy behind, guide others to attain states of awakening as well. So they're just like a flash in the dark. Someone becomes enlightened and then is forgotten and leaves nothing behind. Vijja Charana Sampano, which means perfect or flawless in knowledge and action, or knowledge and behavior. Vijja is knowledge, and charana is literally to travel or to walk, but it's used figuratively very often, meaning the way of behavior. Like we sort of use a similar colloquialism in English. We say, he walks the walk. He talks the talk. He walks the walk. And sampano is again complete or perfect. So vijja, knowledge, the Buddha is particularly associated with the tivijja, the three knowledges. These are knowledges that came to him on his enlightenment night, in the period as leading up to his enlightenment. And the three knowledges there are, first of all, the knowledge of his own past lives. He saw his own previous existences very clearly, going back infinitely in time. He could see, I was such and such a name, such and such a clan, such was my pleasure, such was my pain, and I fell away from that state and I was reborn elsewhere. So that was, in a sense, plumbing his own depth, like clearing out. It's like the deepest possible psychoanalysis you can imagine, like his entire past history, not just of this life, but infinite regress of past lives. So nothing was left dark for him. It was all known. Then in the second watch of the night, he had the second knowledge arise, which was generalizing that first insight and understanding the law of karma and how beings rise and fall in general. And so from the personal, he went to the general, or the universal. And then in the third watch of the night, he went from there to the transcendent by seeing the extinction of the asavas, meaning the destruction of all the root defilements. So this is the equivalent of arahantship or Buddhahood, the destruction of defilements. So those are the three knowledges associated with the Buddha. Charana is perfect conduct, because of course the Buddha was flawless in his conduct. He did nothing careless, certainly nothing immoral, but nothing careless or heedless. Every gesture, every movement was perfect. Sugato is the next one, which means one who goes well. is the literal meaning, so it's translated different ways. This is a general epithet for the Buddha, and it's one that's often used in the canon to refer to the Buddha as a Sugata. It's kind of a curiosity that in now in English and actually in many languages, when we refer to this person, we use the title Buddha, and that's not used very much in the Pali. It is occasionally, but he's more often referred to as either Bhagawa or Sugata or Tathagata. Loka vidu, the knower of the world. Loka is a vidu is from the same root as vidya. It's knowing, that the one who has the knowledge, or the process of knowing. And loka is world, and it has a bit of a loose definition. It's kind of a multivalent term. It can mean, in some contexts, it can mean this world, this earth, this realm of being. In other contexts, it means the universe. And in some cases, the Buddha refers to it as our world of experience. And he says, for example, when I say loka, the world, I am referring to this fathom-long body. Or in another place, I am referring to the six senses. Because this is the world that beings live in, the world that created through the senses and perception is the actual world we live in, rather than any external reality. But the Buddha knows the world in all these different aspects. The next one is Anuttaro Parisadhamma Sarati. And this means the unsurpassed trainer of those suitable for training. It's kind of a literal translation. Sarati is literally a horse trainer, or a charioteer, one who manages horses. The Buddha, of course, as Siddhartha Gautama, was born into the Khattiya, or warrior caste. So we see many of his allusions and images come from that background. Training of horses, training of elephants, and so on. This is things that would be familiar to a Khattiya nobleman. Anuttaro means without a superior. Taro is like the peak of a mountain, or the summit, the top of anything. And Anuttaro means beyond the summit, so unsurpassed. Dhamma here is, if not to be confused with Dhamma, Dhamma. This is a simple D, a hard D. Dhamma, Damma. It just means like a horse, or literally a horse in training, or subject to training. But it here is applied to human beings as those who are able to be trained. Sata Deva Manusanang, the teacher of humans and devas. So the Buddha, Sata, which is another word that sometimes Buddha is referred to in the text as the teacher, Sata. And he taught, of course, humans, we have, the entire Sutta Pitaka, the Pali Canon, is records of the Buddha's discourses. But he also taught devas. And there are some suttas where he's actually teaching devas, such as Saka. So the Buddha was, his enlightenment was supreme, so that even the Brahma gods were his students. In some contexts, he was superior in knowledge and understanding even to the Brahma gods. So the Buddha didn't limit his teaching to any particular class of beings. And we see that amongst humans, he taught everyone from the lowest outcasts up to the kings and princes of the realm and everyone in between. And he also taught in the Deva realms. He spent one whole rainy season in Tawatingsa, sitting on the rose throne that Saka yielded to him, teaching the Abhidhamma to the assembled devas. And this is said to be the origin of the Abhidhamma, is that, as we have it, is that every day while he was teaching in the Deva realm, he would come down to earth for his meal and walk arms around, and then meet with Sariputta and give Sariputta a brief summary of what he taught to the devas. So what we have as Abhidhamma is kind of a abridged version of the Buddhist teaching in Tawatingsa heaven. And it ends with Buddho Bhagawa, Buddho meaning the awakened one, and the Bhagawa has already been discussed, and it serves here just as a bracket to the complete text. The Bhagawa begins with Bhagawa as the first attribute, and then closes with Bhagawa, which is how the Buddha was generally referred to respectfully in the third person. If someone was addressing the Buddha in second person or speaking of the Buddha, they would often say Bhagawa. If the Buddha was speaking of himself, he would say Tathagata. So that's contemplation. That's the formal method of doing contemplation of the Buddha. And one would go through that list and contemplate the different attributes using the imagination, and imagining, there was a being on this earth who had these attributes. How wonderful that is. And when thinking about the Buddha generally, this is a point. I put a link in the chat to an article I wrote some time ago on this topic of contemplating the Buddha. One thing that I think, a general point, when we think about the Buddha, it's perhaps difficult for us to fully relate to him as a figure who actually lived. There's a saying by the Zen teacher Dogen: if you see the old man Sakyamuni, do you see the Tathagata? If you see the Tathagata, do you see the old man Sakyamuni? And this is the most wonderful thing about the Buddha, is that he was a flesh and blood human being, but he attained to this supreme state, this transcendental state that is the supreme possibility of any being. So he has these two sides, and if we only get a partial picture in our mind if we neglect half of that. I think in a lot of Buddhist traditions in the past, there would be a lot of emphasis on the transcendental aspect, and some of the Mahayana schools took it very far, turned the Buddha into a kind of a deity. But that there's the opposite tendency amongst some moderns who want to bring the Buddha down to earth and see him as this ordinary human being who had some wise philosophy. But he was much more than that. He was a flesh and blood human being, and he had his struggles. But then he attained supreme enlightenment, which is a world historical event that's still resonating down through the ages today. So I'll leave it there and see if what we can talk about from the questions in the comments. Okay, my wrong view. I have to expand the font. I can't read this tiny font. Dear Ajahn, my wrong view of the 5 recollections has led me to deep anxiety, despair, and depression. How does a lay person living a life of indulgence and attachment change his accompanying dread of illness, death, and loss into acceptance and loving kindness? Thank you. Well, that is exactly where these kind of anusatis come in. This may be why the Buddha gave them to Mahanama, the layperson, who complained about having a busy life and being involved in many duties. If you contemplate the nature of the Buddha, you're expanding and brightening and opening the mind rather than. I mean, it's important that the 5 recollections are important. That is to consider birth, sickness, old age, and death, to ground ourselves, to understand the reality of our situation in samsara. But if you stop there, it can be depressing. You have to see that there's another side, there's a way out. And that is the Dhamma, and that's Nibbana, that's the Buddha. So contemplating those things is very good. A very good antidote for negativity. Next question. You said the Arahant has not attained full Buddhahood. Would it be possible in theravada for an Arahant to reach Buddhahood after already becoming an Arahant? No, that's not the way it works. In the theravada scheme, there's a distinction between an Arahant and a Buddha. They both have the same realization of Nibbana, so they're, in the most important aspect, they're the same. But once having attained Arahantship, then he doesn't go on to become a Buddha. If there is no self in any being, what are we trying to find liberation from? From suffering. That's very simple. Ajahn, in the Diamond Sutta, it is said that when all forms are seen as unreal, the Tathagata shall be perceived. Do you have any thoughts on the statement? Sorry for bringing up a Mahayana Sutta. No problem. With the Diamond Sutta is very profound. It is a Mahayana text. Seeing all forms as unreal. This is a way of stating the fluidity of reality, which is based on our perception. And the Tathagata is not only the enlightened one, but I think in this context it refers to the enlightened aspect within the chitta, the knowing mind, and the world as we perceive it is just a play of illusion in a sense. It's based on information coming from the outside through the senses, and then the mind creates a simulation world that we actually live in based on that information. And the tathagata or the chitta, knowing that is free. You know. Next question. I saw parents' sphere hovering around outside in the day. Do you have any idea what this bizarre phenomenon might have been? It was about a yard diameter, transparent, and wiggled. Not a clue. I have no idea what that could be. I don't want to speculate. How to understand Buddhaghosa's Path of Purification book. That's the Visuddhimagga. The Visuddhimagga has a very special place in the theravada tradition. It's kind of the summary. Buddhaghosa was a scholar monk who wrote this really masterful work of summarizing the teachings. And I think to approach it, one should have a certain degree of caution, because I don't think, my own impression, I'll just state, for what it's worth, my own feeling is that Buddhaghosa was not really himself much of a meditator. He was a brilliant scholar, so it might be some of the subtleties are more academic than experiential, but it's an extremely valuable text, very useful, and it's difficult. It's a long and difficult book to get through doing it if you want to have the overview of the kind of orthodox Theravada position on everything. What is the final process in mind when reaching Nibbana in the atomic Dhamma view? The series is laid out in some detail. You can find it in the Abhidhamma Sangaha, which has been translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi as the Manual of Abhidhamma. At the very end of the sequence, the actual entry into Nibbana is in 2 mind moments, which are called Magga Phala. That's path and fruit. And Magga is the last karmically effective moment, and then fruit is the karma resultant moment. And Magga is the path. It's the moment when the 8 path factors come together perfectly on a lokutra or transcendent plane, supramundane plane. So they're all aligned to Nibbana. Everything's aligned to Nibbana. And then the result of that is the realization of Nibbana, the fruit of Nibbana. If one attained enlightenment as a lay follower, would they have to live as an ascetic? Can they have few duties? Well, the orthodox position is that an arahant, to be an arahant, requires a complete renunciation. So one's not really able to live as a layperson, as an arahant. With the previous stages of enlightenment, it is possible. Do arahants make any karma? If not, so they don't do anything volitionally, but how? They train the ego to do things ethically, and then they leave the samsara while their ego do things ethically itself. Arahants do not make karma because they don't act out of ignorance. Karma is the result of ignorance, is according to the dependent origination. So the arahant's actions are classified in Abhidhamma as not as volitional, but as or karmic effective, but they're defined as kriya, um, operational, let's say. The motivating factor for the arahant would be such things as compassion or just practicality, for walking for alms around to get his daily meal or whatever like that. But they don't make karma. Uh, it's probably a subtlety whether they have whether the volition. I would say that they do have volition, chetana, um, but that does not result in the creation of karma. Is keeping the precepts really enough? No, it's not enough. Um, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. One also has to develop the mind, but it's essential, but it's not by itself sufficient. Keeping the precepts is uh, a good insurance for a better if one doesn't go any further. Would the Anusatis be considered samatha or vipassana? They're classified as types of samatha, but they're not really samatha in the same sense because um, they don't really progress to jhana. Uh, what benefits outside of faith, gratitude might one obtain developing Buddhanusati? Well, you mentioned faith and gratitude, which are both important and spiritual qualities in and of themselves. But also, I think it helps to align the mind towards that which is transcendental. Well, the Buddha was one who realized uh, the supreme, you know, realized that which is beyond this world. He realized the Lokuttara. So when we contemplate him, we're aligning ourselves to that. Um, so that raises our level of consciousness. It brightens the mind. It should bring joy and light and brightness. It's actually a very good thing to do if you're in a dark place. If you're sliding into despair, depression, and to do these type of meditations, the Buddhanusati or Devanusati, to brighten the mind. If an arahant suffers brain damage, do they retain nibbana? Well, nibbana, realization of nibbana is not uh, dependent on the physical body or the brain. So I would say it makes no difference. In the text, devas tend to remember the karma from their past lives. They get them reborn in that deva state. Do you think that this means that devas all have memories of their previous existences? Um, devas generally remember their past life, one past life. They don't have remembrance of all past lives, but they're immediately preceding human life. And not all devas have that. It's said that if a human being has wrong view and doesn't think in terms of rebirth, if they otherwise are moral and they become a deva, then they don't have that memory. So there are some devas who do not have that memory, but the general run of devas, they recall their immediately preceding birth, and I think that it makes sense because the birth process of becoming a deva is not traumatic. Like for a human being, the birth process is quite traumatic, beginning with conception. Then you're stuck inside a womb for 9 months and in the dark, and then you're thrust out into birth, and that's painful and traumatic, and it disrupts the memory. Do Buddhas always take their penultimate birth into Shita? Yes. Yeah, Bodhisattvas are always take their last, uh, uh, their penultimate birth, as you put it, their next to last birth into Sita. So that Maitreya Buddha is currently waiting into Sita. If one is walking on the path but one is miserable, does it mean we're practicing wrong? I would say it does. You're missing something. You shouldn't be. The path should be to free one from misery. So you have to figure out what you're doing wrong. Sorry for this kind of Mahayana question. In Theravada, the relationship of the Buddha's followers after his parinirvana is only to Dhamma, or is there a way to relate also to Buddha himself? No, in Theravada, the Buddha is gone to uh, ultimate or parinirvana. He's not present anymore to relate to. We're relating to his memory and respect and gratitude for his being, but it's not like a deity that we can pray to or ask for favors. So he's, of course, the most precious legacy he left behind was the Dhamma, and we still have that. Is there just one stream of rebirth, including all conscious beings? There's an infinite stream that can collide and merge or diverge. In Theravada, it's considered to be a simple, one stream for each being. I have heard that there are some in Vajrayana Buddhism. There's some allowance for divergence and merger of streams of rebirth, but that we don't find that at all in Theravada. Can you consider doing live guided meditation sessions online? I could consider that. I don't know if this is a good vehicle for that. There'd be a lot of dead, silent space. I don't know if something to consider. I don't know if it would really work so well. Can a follower of the Buddha become a Buddha, or can they just become an Arahant at maximum? Now, you can become a Buddha, but not at this time. No one can become a Buddha while the teachings of the previous Buddha are extant. There is a minor text, commentarial text about the Bodhisattva path in Theravada, and it's considered to be very difficult, but one can make a resolution to become a Buddha, and that would mean that one does not become a stream winner, because if you become a stream winner, you're cut short. You only have 7 more lifetimes. So you have to perfect all your baramis, so that will take hundreds and hundreds of lifetimes. If the Abhidhamma was for a Deva audience in Tawa Tingsa, do they have the exact mental process as us? Since the Abhidhamma seems very particular to human experience. There would be generally the same. We'd have to make some adjustments here and there, but generally it would be the same, because the Devas are also beings in the Kama Bhumi. They're much closer to us than they are to the Brahmas, for example. They're like elevated forms of human consciousness. So it would be very similar. There'd be a very close similarity. As the teachings the Buddha gave to Sariputta were probably directed towards a human level. Having a view like this: 1, there is infinity. 1, there's nothingness. 2, infinity is the same as nothingness. Does this view contrast with Buddhist right view. Um, there is infinity, there is nothingness. Infinity is the same as nothingness. Uh, I could say that doesn't sound wrong to me. Um, Everything is empty. Everything is sunya. It is a bit of an assumption that there is infinity, but we can go with that. Uh, um, Everything is void. Everything is without substance. Is, um, so I mean, you could phrase it in the way you have it. It's not. It's not. It's kind of a unusual phrasing from the theravada point of view. You wouldn't find a statement like that, but I don't see it. I don't see it as wrong. Uh, could anagami stop seeking enlightenment in the pure abodes and just chill there for all eternity? No, I don't. I don't see that. There's no eternal existence in Buddhism. You said Dewas can recollect their past life. If they've believed in rebirth, would be enough to have, for example, Christian, Muslim, and have believed in life after death. That's a good question. I don't know. I would think so. I would think that's likely because a Christian or a Muslim, if they have a view of a heaven world, so that is a kind of it's a limited sort of perception of rebirth. It's just a one time rebirth, but it's still a rebirth. So I would think so. I would think they would have a recollection. I think there's only really the materialist view that would not. Will the next Buddha come when the human lifespan is 80,000 years? That's the prediction in the uh, Chakrawati Sutta that the human lifespan will keep increasing until it's 80,000 years, and then the Buddha will come. To see this seems interesting. Where could I learn more about it? Well, you could go to my book, which next uh, the next commentator has given me the title of it. What was the Buddha's advice for raising kids? I have a child who was 5. I don't think the Buddha really got. I can't recall seeing any text where the Buddha specifically addresses raising children. And I certainly don't have any experience in that regard. You could, you should certainly be guided by Dhamma principles. You want, and you'll want your child to grow up to be a wise, compassionate adult. So if your training of him would have to be guided by that. Is rebirth outside the bounds of time phenomenal world? Can we be reborn into the past? No, a rebirth is samsara. It's actually pretty much the definition of time and phenomenal world. That's being trapped in time and phenomenality is rebirth. So doesn't really go the other way. What is the relationship between Nirodha and Nibbana? In some respect, you could say that they're synonyms and certainly very similar. But I think Nibbana is used more as an abstract, like referring to the state or the it's hard to find a proper word, or the quality or uh, the Nibbana as an abstract idea or principle, and Nirodha is the experience of it, is the experience of cessation. At least that's just how they seem to be used in context in that way. Okay, so I think we'll stop there, and thank you for coming. That was interesting. Interesting questions this time, and we're going next week. We're going to continue on with this series, and we'll do contemplation of the Dhamma. So, best wishes to all.